Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Stephen. So I'd like to welcome back each of our speakers onto the screen to take part in our next panel session. So Travis, Tim, Roger, Jim, Colin, and Stephen, please all welcome back. So the session, we're probably going to have it about maybe 15 or 20 minutes or so we get back on track on timing. And viewers, if you haven't already, please submit your questions using the Q&A button, and we'll get to as many as we can. So we already do have a few. I want to start off with one that I want to wrap around to the whole group, and so maybe quick answers here. But does resource size matter? People are in Canada for a specific reason, and each of your companies have or should expect large resource bases. ValOre's got 43 million pounds, always grows quickly when worked. ISO expecting an initial and large high-grade resource here. Labrador, sizable uranium, vanadium, but you've got a massive land package in essentially the entire district. UX, and especially with UEC, many assets and pounds are adding up. And then, NexGen's Arrow is large, it's high grade, probably, in my opinion, the best uranium deposit on the planet. So, does size matter? Do investors care? Do off-takers care? What are your thoughts? And maybe we'll kick it off with you, Travis.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for sure, it does matter. I think it matters probably less than it maybe used to, though, in the sense, I think what matters now is, are you able to get on side all your stakeholders more than, the technical feasibility of a project? In other words, I think you'll see lots of interesting projects, and I'm not speaking about anyone on this, but around the world, probably get found and look technically feasible, but run into significant challenges if you don't do the right things from the very early days. So I actually think resource size definitely matters in the sense it has to be economic, and you got to be in a good kind of position in the cost curve, which comes down to grade and size, obviously. But I do think much more importantly than either of those factors, frankly, is are you going to be able to actually go through the process and extract it?
Yeah. And Tim, we're waiting for a resource from you, right?
Yeah, we're working towards that, Dave. Like we said before, we've continued to drill sort of to this outskirts of the deposit, and we believe we've reached kind of that that initial edge of the hurricane zone. So yeah, we'll work towards that and hopefully get something out very soon to give the market a sense. With respect to size, Travis nailed it, but for someone like NexGen, I mean, they've got it all. They've got size, and they've got it in the right jurisdiction, and it's in it's the right kind of deposit as well. So it depends on the quality of the deposit. It definitely depends on the location, the type of deposit and the mineability. And I think the interesting thing for at least in the basin, going back not that long ago, a few decades ago, it was open pit, the Key Lake project, Rabbit Lake was basement hosted, so pretty traditional mining. Then you got, McArthur River raise boring and all the freezing, and Cigar Lake jet boring. That was very innovative, but that's become almost, people see it as kind of the norm these days. And I think, as we're moving forward, you're looking at more innovation. You've got Orano, looking at Sabre, how to address some of these, great high grade deposits that may not be the 200-300 million pound elephants, but do it economically, because when you've got something that concentrated, that high grade, surely there's a way to do it. That maybe you don't have to go underground, maybe you don't have to do all the freezing, but there's ways to do it, and certainly Denison's showing the same type of innovation as well. So yeah, I think it a lot of factors, but I think innovation will play a big role in whether size, how much size matters.
And Roger, UX already had about 150 million, but what does it mean to put it together with resources from UEC?
I think putting them together gives us a multiple source supply, which is something that utilities like to see. It gives them a little bit of less risk involved. For us, it's also the capital to get into production is significantly lower than a lot of companies out there. The size is definitely important in terms of total resource out there from an investor point of view as well. I think the last cycle we went through, it was, intersections drove behavior. I'm not sure individual intersections drive behavior this time around, but because there wasn't the the magical gold scenario where you have a couple of hits and a big gold coming like a barrac's going to run at you. There's a little more patience involved in the uranium industry that way, and you have to develop the resources. So yes, size does matter.
Mhm. And Jim and Colin, you know, ValOre in the past has added pounds for, I think, $1.30 a pound or so. Is that something you continue to push forward?
I'll jump in here. I think one of the things that I heard, which is totally correct, is jurisdiction matters. So is the local community going to benefit? Can they see the benefits, and will they support it? But I think really it comes down to margin. So payback on an asset. I think size matters in a bull market, but margin matters in the cyclical lows. When you actually have to get something financed, your investors want to make sure they get paid back. So the shallow drilling that we do to add resources helps us with margin, because potentially we have a lower strip rate. It just makes a higher margin project. Colin, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to say.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, I think, and being where we are up in Nunavut, we need size to go through those cyclic lows. And, I think we know the potential is there. At Angelac, Kigavik was what, up north of 130 million pounds. So we're in the right part of the world, and we're going to get it there.
Yeah.
And then sorry for Labrador, Stephen, you've got a massive land package. You've already got uranium and a lot of vanadium there. Are you focused on growing that, or just confirming that, or, how do you start looking at a package that's 125 kilometers long?
Well, again, that's a different question. That's the machine learning. But to your principal question, yes and no, right? In the end, I think Jim is right. It's margin. This is about economics. In the end, the size is irrelevant if you can't pull the stuff out of the ground economically. One of the most forgiving pieces of any sort of resource is grade, obviously. But since we're in a region that will have, especially relative to these projects, lower grade, then yes, we will need better size, because in the end, that economics comes from, you need the bulk tonnage. Happily, we're near surface. So if it's small, near surface or high grade, if it's low grade, then you want near surface and bulk tonnage. And it just works into the economics of it. And as has been said here, the permitting is incredibly important. Other things are incredibly important, but it all comes down to the math. And the size can be a red herring, right? You see this in gold too, where you guys are like, oh, I have X number of tens of millions of ounces, but if they're not mineable, I don't care.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thank you. ESG investing has certainly become a key aspect for funds. Uranium as a green energy fuel aside, some of you companies are looking at developing projects sustainably, and social outreach has really been of utmost importance here. So can you maybe discuss recent, and maybe let's start with NexGen, because they just had a recent announcement regarding working with local communities. So.
Briefly, yes, it's critically important. And it takes a long time, and it's kind of like just, you got to build trust over time and have high integrity. Ultimately, say what you're going to do and then do it over time to build trust. And then specifically with the designs themselves, we've got a phenomenal asset. And so we do have some ability to eat costs to make it a better and even more environmentally well managed and designed mine. Like, again, the underground tailings management is a perfect example. Like, that is something that costs significant amounts to us, and we don't have to do it. Like, we could definitely permit and build a normal tailings facility, but the opportunity was there. We looked at it, evaluated it, and presented it to all our stakeholders and got huge buy-in for it. And so that's what we're going through the permitting process with. And as I mentioned in the presentation, a lot of other elements like water recycling and looking at obviously GHG emissions and everything else associated with it. But it is, as I said, we're of the view that that is the most important part of developing these projects. I think the mining industry as a whole has done actually a really good job in recent times. I think they just haven't done a good job, us probably included, of explaining all the good stuff that's been going on. I think that's improving, and that's a very good thing, because it'll help attract younger people into the industry, which we need.
Yeah, Jim, this is something that ValOre is focused on for years as well, correct? You've got stakeholders that live up and down of it, but community groups.
Yeah, NTI is our partner, and I think what Travis says, I totally echo that, because there's no other business in the world that has so much scrutiny placed on it. And really, Travis, think about the market cap of NexGen and how much cash they have and how much money they're spending, but there's no revenues yet. So there's no other business in the world where if you balance expenditures and resources allocated towards ESG and community consultation compared to revenue, there's nothing like it. Like in the mining business, because real estate development, they're making money fast. Oil and gas, they're making money. So as an industry, we don't do a good job of showing what we're doing, the efforts we're making, and Canadian companies definitely do that. I think we're global leaders, and we really, the importance is spectacular to all of us, every member of our team. But in our case, we do have a partnership with NTI, and they're very savvy business people, but obviously they're looking to protect the environment, their local environment, and the people that live in Nunavut territory. So it's a great partnership and a great standing board.
Yeah. And maybe Stephen, if you could chime in on this topic as well, because you're in a fairly sensitive part of the world in Labrador.
That's true. Like it has to be fundamental to what we do as mining and exploration companies. Obviously, the environment is the thing that gets the hot topic. However, in a way, it's almost an easier thing to deal with in that you can engineer and design to do that appropriately, and you have to have that built into what you do. And that's how I started my career as an engineer. But for a company like ours, so early on, like we're still early stage exploration. And as was said early, it's about the social side. It's the social license that kills or doesn't kill a project, right? If the local community doesn't want you, and we're in a sensitive area. So we actually fall within the Nunavut land claim. They have their own self-government. Up in the north, our other project falls within the Innu land claims. They are working on self-government. And so you have to work with them. And I think it behooves all mining companies and exploration companies to start there, right? I think sometimes we see it as this necessary evil that we try to deal with at the end. No, I believe strongly you go through the front door on day zero and you start establishing the relationship. Before we even started the company, we were out meeting the local communities, because again, somebody tries to shut it down, especially in the First Nations and Indigenous communities. Is that really the fight you want to have? Is that really the brand you want to create? And it does make it much more difficult. So I think it has to be part of your DNA. If it's just a bolt-on, it's not going to happen.
Okay. Travis, I have a question for you here. It's a sensitive topic. Is NexGen a miner or a seller? It looks like many market commentators are suggesting you guys are looking to sell, but have you had these discussions yet? Do you have perhaps a price?
No, I mean, look, it's very pretty black and white for us, frankly. Like we, on a day-to-day basis, have an idea of what this asset's worth to us. Like, i.e., we know what it's going to like, so we know what the picture looks like when we're in production, and we can kind of risk adjust that back to today and all the things that we know we have to do and our evaluation of what that's going to take. And so that creates some kind of value for us. I'm not going to share that here, but we have a value that we believe on every given day. And we're just marching towards that. Every decision we make, every person we hire, every interaction we have with anybody is all on the basis that we're going to close the mine down at the end of the day. Our evaluation on whether we do that or somebody else does that is just, we don't own 100% of the company. It's owned by the shareholders, and we have fiduciary responsibility clearly. But so all we look at is on any given day, if somebody comes and they offer us something, well, it kind of sends us in a trajectory that's better than what it is in our hands. Well, then we'll recommend that to shareholders. If not, we'll recommend against it. And it's really that simple for us. But I mean, again, like the underground tailings management facility is a perfect example of how, like, if somebody thinks we're insincere about that, just look at the underground tailings management facility. Like, you wouldn't do that if your game was just to flip the asset, because it hurts your economics. You're not going to do that. That's on the basis that we want to be leaders in this industry. Again, whether we are or not, we don't have our head in the sand. We don't own 100% of the company. So we can't tell you what's definitely going to happen. But every decision we make is on the basis that we're building this project until we're taken off that track.
Exactly. And speaking of M&A, you know, Roger, what is the possibility of a superior bid emerging to trump the UEC offer? You know, are any other companies showing interest, or did they show interest prior? And another question, maybe you can comment on the $5 million placement. It's obviously closed already, so I don't think anything can be done of that. But is that potentially impacting other potential suitors?
Well, of course, I'm really going to be in a difficult spot to tell you about whether other people have come to the table to talk to us. It's, you know, did we look at all the possibilities out there that we possibly can before we came to the decision? Absolutely. Will I tell you if other people knocked on our door? I can't tell you that. Are there a potential for someone to come over the top? I mean, I've heard people I've heard all sorts of speculation on that. Certainly is possible for sure in any M&A transaction. Definitely very possible. But is it, even if I knew that, I wouldn't be able to share that with you. So at this point in time, the $5 million placement really is more about making sure that we continue to go at the pace we wanted to go at with this year's programs. With an M&A transaction, there are a little more costs on hard dollars that you wouldn't normally have budgeted for in a process like this. There are, you know, we pay advisors, et cetera, and so forth. So there's a little bit of expense there. And in case things take a little longer to close, on the off chance that an Investment Canada decides to do a bit of a review, which is extraordinarily unlikely, the company's in a comfortable spot moving forward. I don't think $5 million on a $200 million transaction is going to change the universe from anyone coming to the. If a superior bid is going to be stopped by $5 million, it's probably not a superior bid.
Fair enough. Okay, I guess last question before we have to wrap things up. Tim, have you started considering mining hurdles? I know you're pre-resource here at Hurricane, but you know, a question came in: how might you handle water seepage from the sandstone like you see at MacArthur or Cigar? You know, have you considered how you get the pounds out of the ground as of yet?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I mean, you know, it is early days. I mean, do we look at all the other projects and everybody else that are doing, you know, things in the Athabasca Basin and kind of take a look and go, hey, does that, you know, do we think that could work for a hurricane or not work? Absolutely. You know, like I mentioned before, you know, there's a lot of innovation going on. That's something I think that'll be, you know, we'll be looking at very closely. You've got Orano, like I said, just did a Sabre test last summer. They had great results. You know, Denison looking at ISR, all these mining methods, you know, especially the less invasive ones for, you know, projects that are maybe a little smaller than, you know, the monster, you know, elephant projects in the basin, where, you know, sinking shafts and doing massive freezing like Cigar and MacArthur maybe are too expensive. I think that's could be the future of mining a lot of these projects in the Athabasca Basin. You know, NexGen's in a unique spot. They've got, you know, basement hosted, you know, huge deposit. So their path is certainly, you know, to me looks pretty clear. For us, yeah, it's still to be written. The other piece, you know, I'll just highlight again, you know, we do have that border. So we've got, you know, what we'll continue to take our project forward on a standalone basis. Absolutely. That's how we see it. At the same time, if you've got someone on the other side doing work and it's pretty clear there's something else there, I think that story, you know, will also unfold over time, because that will speak a lot to the size and, you know, scope of the project overall. And obviously, again, size, you know, doesn't necessarily matter if you've got the right, you know, mining, you know, potential, but it can open up a lot of different feasible options for you down the road. So yeah, listen, it's early days, but we're looking at all of that, David.
Great. Okay, well, let's leave it there. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, and great discussion.